June 9th, 2021. This is the Arlington County, Virginia Board of Equalization hearings. We have 6 cases on the agenda. The first case that we're going to start with is RPC 04036008. The property is located at 3733 North Nelson Street, and Mr. Philip Feliciano is on the line. Mr. Feliciano, you can start with your 8 minutes and tell us about your property, sir.
First of all, thank you very much. Hello? Hello?
We hear you.
All right. Please give me time for that interruption. Thank you for your opportunity to come before the Board of Equalization today. The purpose of this appeal is not to question Arlington County's right or responsibility to assess county property, but a fulfillment of the board's obligation to equitably and fairly apply its assessment as directed by the Commonwealth of Virginia and Arlington County law. We know it can be tedious and difficult. Dependence on third-party information, which promotes property and stuff like that, which may be incomplete or inaccurate for a variety of reasons. Thank you for the work that is required for your task. We will be using the following abbreviations today. The Department of Real Estate Assessment is DREA. Board Equalization is BOE. Fulcrum Properties is Fulcrum. International Association of Appraisal Officers will be IAAO. The RPC number 04-036-008 will be referred to as subject property. The background information is primarily, I assume that all of you have had an opportunity to look at what Ms. Vitus prepared and sent a 51-page document to us. Had a lot of information. I assume you've had the opportunity to review it. We received that information on Memorial Day weekend, May 28th at 3:54 p.m. And it had an undated memorandum to the board BOE complied by the appraiser. It was prepared by Ms. Vitus for this June 9th BOE hearing. We trust that the BOE has had an opportunity to review it. Having received the documents on Friday, Memorial Day weekend, late in the afternoon, it left little time to access all the information referred therein. Now, Fulcrum purchased the property on March 24th, 2017 for $843,000. The DRE 2017 assessment value of the property, the land value was $596,600, and its proven value was $266,100 for a total of $858,700. An assessment review was conducted by DRA on May 7th after Fulcrum purchased in March. On May 7, 2017. This May 7th review assessed the same value, the land value at $596,600 and an improvement value of $249,300, which represents a 4.8% difference from the January 1st, 2017 assessment. Thus, the total assessment was $836,500, which was about $6,500 less than the purchase price. That Fulcrum paid. We purchased the subject property on December 1st, 2017 from Fulcrum and as stated in the contract of purchase as is conditioned for $1,145,000. The sale price of $1,145,000 represents Fulcrum's purchase price when they bought it, their improvement costs, and their profits. Now, I just give you by way of background. I'm suggesting that you look at the background so you know what's going on. Owner's history of appeal. The 2021 assessment improvement values per square foot in the comparison homes were less than the subject properties per square foot. We were advised in a response, and I don't remember the exact location, but and I think Vitus's letter saying it's an inappropriate way. You cannot use square foot. Well, you also say that, and the Commonwealth of Virginia's code says you can use all kinds of programs that talk about assessment, including what's the name of the organization?
It's in the Virginia section 58-13379. It says the taxpayer must show the assessment is not uniform in its application, and it was not arrived at in accordance with generally accepted appraisal practices, procedures, rules, and standards as prescribed by a nationally organized professional appraisal organization such as the IAAO.
Yeah, which is International Association of Assessment Analysts. Now, which says in section of their standards that square footage is appropriate. I want to make sure that that's understood. And section 4.1, valuation methods. So that's in their appeals process, and it's stated in that section 4.1. Now, where do we go to now? Statements.
We received a letter in March stating that Ms. Vitus or ZREA had reviewed our assessment appeal documentation, which was submitted in spreadsheet and written form, providing 5 properties in our immediate neighborhood and several of the homes adjacent to ours, that their homes, which were equally remodeled, were assessed at a significantly less per square foot land and improvement value than ours was. That submission of appeal we received a response to in March, stating that, again, it was not acceptable, and CREA provided 5 additional properties of their selection, 4 of which were in our neighborhood of Rivercrest. 1 was in Bellevue Forest, and those properties were stated as not having that they were made as comparable, but they stated that they had a less effective age of the property, being quoted at property properties were significantly less with stated value effective ages of 1995, 2005, etc. And yet, if you access information still available on the website of Zillow and MSL listings,
which the county used.
For it, RPCO 4002002 stated it was effective age of 2006, and yet the Zillow listing had a larger square footage, and it was noted that the renovation had received an architectural award in Washingtonian Magazine.
Whatever, yeah, it's been
as of 2018.
Right.
So several of the properties, most of the properties, actually 4 of the 5, had been recently renovated, and that was not noted in the DRE information submitted with their response to us in March.
And then there's questionable information that they raised in the Vitus thing. For instance, that the roof, when we bought the house, here's one thrust here.
Okay, Mr. Feliciano, I'm going to ask you, your time has expired. I'm going to ask you to wrap up in the next 30 seconds, please.
You interrupted me in the beginning, don't forget. Here's the other thing. You interrupted, now I got to get my train of thought. The Fulcrum builder, remember this, all his improvements were included in our purchase price. They didn't subsequently happen to our purchase. And Ms. Vitus stated that the roof was new. It was not new. In fact, in one of the reports, it says 2 years old. But I had a builder come in because I was concerned because some of the shingles were missing, and he did an inspection. He says about 4 or 5 years old, and he repaired it. So it's things, all those kinds of little missing, and let me just say this. We have presented discrepancies in information considered, presented by the DREA evidence and support for assessment valuation of subject product. Given the quality of material and the age is, as documented above, not always verified prior to determining assessment values despite available evidence or situation when homeowners can install. 3, our purpose in documenting discrepancies of information and assumption of quality and effective age regarding subject property versus similar homes in our neighborhood, and using MSL listings, Zillow, and all that. 4, I got 2 more. Thus, for the above stated information, the appellants refute the claim that the subject property was fully renovated home. Quote, unquote.
Mr. Feliciano, I need you to wrap up. You're almost 2 minutes over time.
The last one, the most fair, equitable, and objective method of determining assessment value of properties is a specific area to be used. Square footage. Acceptable methods by the IAAO, approved by the Commonwealth of Virginia law. That's it.
Okay, that would be it. Thank you. Please mute the appellant's microphone, please. Ms. Vitas for the county.
Good morning. My name is Tressa Vitas, and I will be representing the county in the next 2 cases. 3733 North Nelson Street is a single-family split foyer home. It was built in 1959 with an effective age of 2017 and a quality of very good plus. Prior to its purchase in 2017, the subject property went through an extensive renovation, which included updating electrical, plumbing, kitchen, baths, windows, etc. As a result of the remodel, the effective age and quality were risen for the 2018 assessment. Using the 2017 MLS listing, plans for PU 1701369 and information submitted by the appellant, I found no changes need to be made to the record. The appellant feels that their property is not being assessed equitably with properties that have also been remodeled. The appellant submitted several properties that have been renovated as comparables. Using the submitted comparables, the appellant created a spreadsheet using a per square foot method to show how the values of the comparative properties have increased their renovation. While the property submitted by the appellant also went through renovations, some prior to their sales, the renovations weren't as extensive as the subjects. There are many different descriptive factors with these comparables that cause differences in price per square foot, which is why this method of valuation of comparison is not accurate and is not used to assess properties. Each property is unique in its own replacement cost based on the many different valuation factors such as quality, effective age, and square foot. The adjustments made to the record of the properties submitted by the appellant and the subject property can be affirmed by their sales prices. Looking at the information, the submitted comps and the recent sales, I recommend that the board confirm the county's assessment of $1,186,200. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions from board members? Do we have any? No? All right. Ms. Vitas, do you have anything else you need to tell us about the property?
I would just like to point out that this is the first time that this home is seeing an assessment that is higher than its sales price, and it's still only $40,000 above that sales price in 2017. And again, I would just recommend that the board confirm our assessment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Feliciano, you have 1 minute to wrap up your case, sir. Is he on the call, Rosa?
It looks like he's muted.
I can see. Mr. Feliciano, can you turn your microphone on?
He's muted, yes.
Can you unmute him, Rosa?
No, I don't have that up. It won't.
Has he called in? All right, the minute has expired. This will just go to the board members only. What does everybody think? Mr. Matzkin.
I have a question for us, probably mostly Jose, because he does the most residential real estate. The conflict, and I've seen it before, certainly, the conflict in this case between Zillow and the department on the effective ages, meaning additions, improvements to various and sundry comparables. Doesn't Zillow get their stuff from MLS, their information? Doesn't MLS get it from the public record and realtors? How can Zillow have, making this up, a new kitchen when the department doesn't know anything about it? And one caveat, there could be a new kitchen and the department doesn't know about it either because it wasn't permitted or the department didn't find the permit. Having said that, how could Zillow know? Do you have anybody have a comment on that?
Well, Zillow does get the information from all the multiple listing services. If there's no information on the MLS, normally they will get from either public records or any publication, any ad that normally was listed before, even from the owner. So I'm not sure that it's all the time accurate, because I get calls sometimes, they see this on Zillow, and then the information I check when it's on MLS, it's a little different than what Zillow has. So I have to tell people, well, that information is from, 2 or 3 years ago. So it's not necessarily updated. So I don't rely, to be honest, a lot on Zillow or Trulia. But most of the time, yeah, the information is obtained from the multiple listing services.
And sometimes it's misinterpreted, or it's obsolete, or accurate. Okay.
Right.
But quite often it's also given by the realtors and submitted to MLS. So there may be a little skewing there to help sell the property.
Little puffery, as we say in the trade. Thank
Yeah.
you. That's good. That was my suspicion. Thanks for helping.
Okay, other comments? Mr. Hoffman?
Yeah, I was listening for it. I don't think I heard the appellant make a statement that he felt like he overpaid for the property in 2017 or anything to that nature. So when you run out the assessment today, it's like a 1% annual increase in value for 3 years, and I know that's well below the county, and that's well below the neighborhood. So he's not making the assertion that he overpaid. So I would say he probably paid fair market value by the description that it was land plus cost of improvements. So and just looking at the comps, I think they're pretty good. So I don't really see a compelling argument to reduce.
Greg, did you see anywhere what the average increase in the area was? I looked for it.
It wasn't in the packet, but these areas have been 6 to 7% consistently, at least year over year, the last year throughout Arlington. So I don't see it being 1% in that neighborhood.
Okay. Any other comments?
Yeah, I agree. I think the appellant didn't really make a compelling case. I know he's trying to put everything based on the square footage, but I think the job that Ms. Vitus did is very clear, very good. And the increase, the value that is assessed right now compared to the sales price from 4 years ago, to me, that just tells me it's more than in line.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Mr. Maskin.
Very, very quickly.
Excuse me. This is Mary Feliciano. You muted us. We're on telephones. I had to find another phone to call you. You muted us at the end of Ms. Vitus's presentation when you asked us to give our
okay. Fine. I'm going to give you 1 minute. I'm going to give you 1 minute. 1 minute exactly to speak.
Okay. Okay.
You're going to the way that we've been treated on this, you think this is equitable, as you would say? This is unbelievable.
Okay, first of all, I do want to point out, having listened to the questions being asked by the board, that the information submitted by DREA in justification showing what they claimed were comparables, listing 2005 effective dates when you have MSL or MLS and Zillow stating that the house was awarded a 2018 renovation by Washingtonian Magazine. The information is not correct that DRE gets. People do improvements to their homes that they do not get permits for. But
ours has a permit that was applied before we purchased it, which listed the county. Arlington has the permit. They know exactly what was done to this house.
And we haven't had any improvements since then, but since 2019 to 2021, our land value has increased 9.7%.
Okay, thank you. Your minute is up.
Our value of 26.
They'll interrupt you all.
No, I'm not, sir, I'm not interrupting you. You're given 1 minute and I've given you the minute. Okay, thank you. This is going back to the board members. Any additional comments based on the information that the appellants just spoke about in their minute?
I mean, I'll just say one thing.
Mr. Hoffman.
They keep mentioning Zillow, and I don't know if they're using that as support, but Zillow's got a $1.3 million estimate on this house.
That's a good point.
Not that
Mr.
I ever give any
Right.
validity to Zillow's estimates, but they're using it as support for their case.
Right. Okay, Mr. Matzkin.
I just wanted to comment because this comes up somewhat often. Appellants of residential community of residential properties oftentimes use the square foot method as comparing theirs to others. And I appreciated the department's explanation on, although they may use square footage, why they do not. And that was very well said. So thank you.
All right. Would someone like to make a motion?
I'll go ahead and make a motion based on the information that we have and the comparables that the assessment be confirmed at $1,186,200.
Okay, we have a motion and a second by Mr. Matzkin. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, it's unanimous. The county is confirmed at $1,186,200. Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Feliciano. Is Mr. Gregory on?
It's Mr. John. They reversed my
sorry.
name, Gregory John. It's fine. It's like it happens often.
Okay. I would suggest in the future for any other appellants that are on here, you can make the assumption that the board has in fact read the cases and is familiar with the cases. The first appellant spent 4 minutes talking about abbreviations and making sure that we had access to it and had read it. So moving forward, please assume that all board members are familiar with your property and the case. Okay, calling the second case, RPC 03003-170, 4110 40th Place North. Mr. Gregory John is here. He's the owner of the property. Mr. John, you can start with your 8 minutes and tell us about your property, sir.
Thank you and good morning. So I'm Gregory John, and my wife and I, Sarah, purchased this house last year in August. And so, I think the fair market value of the house should, be reflected in what it sells for. And there seems to be a pretty big disparity between what we paid for it and the assessment. And so we met with Teresa and spoke with her several times and came out. I think Jorge may have joined her as well to inspect the exterior of the property as well. They did revise it, but it's still like $150,000 more than what we actually paid for it. And so that's kind of where this appeal is coming from. We believe the fair market value is what typically it's sold for. The neighborhood has seen a lot of turnover in the last year, really within about a 2-week span. 4 of the houses sold, so it's not like there aren't people out there shopping for homes. And so I'll go through a little bit of the facts, but it sounds like you all have read the details and what we submitted. I submitted the lender appraisal, so you have a number of comps there and comparisons and what came out of that. They came within $1,000 of what we paid for the house, for whatever that's worth. But at least that is a third-party appraisal of the value of the home. Yeah, like I said, I don't know. I'm probably not going to take the whole 8 minutes because I don't have much more other than I believe the price that we paid for the house reflects the value of the house, and I think that should then work its way into the county's assessment. And so I think that's really, yeah, I can say I can walk through kind of like the sales. So they tried to, the previous owner had tried to sell it for over a year. He listed it in July of 2019, and then lowered the price in November, lowered the price in April, lowered it again in May. It sat at $1.5 million for over a month. He lowered it again in June, and then that's when we started working in July on kind of an offer and closed, and we ended up at the 1.467 as the price that we paid for the home. So it's hard for me to understand an assessment that is above that. I know it's like difficult to really figure out. Each home is kind of unique, but I think when you have a sale, that helps establish what the value of a particular home is, and I think that that our house is worth closer to what we paid for it, not the assessment. That's all I have. So feel free to discuss or have Ms. Vitis give her.
Okay, thank you, sir. And then we'll come back for questions. Ms. Vitis for the county, please.
I just want to apologize for the name confusion. That was my fault. It just gets a little tricky, and I hope your baby's doing well. So 4110 40th Place North is a two-story frame house. It was built in 1994 with an effective age of 1994. And a quality of excellent plus. An exterior inspection was conducted on February 2nd, 2021 by myself and George Carvajal. The appellant purchased the home in July of 2021 for $1,467,000, and they feel that the assessment value should reflect their purchase price. In reviewing the subject sale, interior information, and land valuation in comparison with other surrounding comparables, the quality of the subject was lowered from excellent plus to excellent minus. This is the lowest quality rating of the homes on the cul-de-sac and matches the quality of the neighboring property 03003-171. Lowering the quality of the subject reduced the improvement value by $142,100. The subject's current land value of $927,000 is in line with neighboring parcels and parcels in the neighborhood, given its size of 22,143 in an R10 or R20. There were two other land sales of R10 lots in the analysis period. These lots are substantially less square footage than the subject, and their sales support the current land valuation. RPC 03035-012 has 6,600 square feet and sold for $870,000 on June 29th, 2020. And RPC 03073-017 has 10,000 square feet and sold for $880,000 on January 31st, 2020. No further adjustments to the land or improvement is recommended. Having conducted an exterior inspection and looking at the sales in close proximity to the subject's property, I believe that the sales price can be attributed to the circumstances surrounding the sale. Based on the information collected, our assessment of $1,621,700 is fair and equitable, and recommend that the board confirm our new and reduced value. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Questions from board members? Mr. Huffman.
What do you mean by the circumstances surrounding the sale?
Mr. John might be best in explaining this one, but from what I understand and when speaking to the realtor, originally the house was placed up for auction, which, as we know, like isn't a really big thing here in Arlington. So I think there might have been confusion surrounding that. But if Mr. John would like to speak to this, he might be more better at answering it.
Yeah, I don't have the full facts, but so I think he listed it for 1.9 million in 2019. Did not get that, lowered it, and then I believe in early 2020 he tried to do an auction. I don't know what happened with that. Like, clearly it didn't sell, or they didn't get offers, and so then they lowered the price and put it back on the market for a traditional sale. But like I said, it was on the market for $1.5 million for a month, like in a standard sale with no offers at that price, which again is over 100,000 less than the current assessment, the current revised assessment. You know, we checked it out, other people were checking it out, and we went in after they lowered the price again to 1.475. And so, I mean, it was listed traditionally for a very long time at a high price. It was listed again for a lower price in a hot market with a lot of people shopping and purchasing homes. And we were the only one who wanted to pay what the price, like, I wanted to pay less, but like, you know, my wife wanted the house, and so we got the house. So we paid up for it.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Penaranda, did you have a question?
Well, yeah, well, the question was pretty much that. What were the circumstances? Because I mean, I can't find a listing. I don't know when it was listed, the dates or anything. I do not find any listing on the MLS at all. And normally I could locate, even for the past 10 years. But in this particular case, I don't see any listing. That's why I was trying to find out if this was directly from the seller or, through a realtor, but it wasn't posted on the MLS, just on advertising. Yeah, I'm not sure why. It's just not listed at all. But I think that was clarified. Unless, Mr. John, you have a listing information, a listing number, I can probably locate it, but I don't
I
have
can try to find that. Like, like we found our Redfin and our agent I was aware of it for a while. And I don't know what a listing number. I can pull it up on Zillow, but it looked to me like he initially listed it in 2012 and tried to sell it for several months, and then he listed again in July of 2019 for the 1.9 million, and then in November he lowered it in November of 2019, like a notional amount, and he lowered it again in April of 2020, and then I think that's where he went and did the auction, and then it went back on the market in May for traditional sale. Is there somewhere on like Zillow where we'll have like the MLS? I'm not as steeped in real estate.
Yeah.
How things work with MLS or any of that.
I do see the sale on MLS. I'm pulling it up on mine now.
Do you have a listing number or anything?
The MLS number is VAAR 161420.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Mr.
Yeah,
Huff?
just for Ms. Vitas, I'm looking at the other, you had one neighboring comp that was 4112, and then 4109, I guess wasn't sold, but did you look at that as like an assessment comp? Because it's assessed at $1,587,000. This is directly next door. And it looks like it has a little bit bigger lot.
What was the RPC on that one?
RPC 03/03/171.
That's the subject property. Oh, 71. Sorry,
71. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the assessment comp that we used to lower the quality on the next door to bring it in line with that one.
Okay, I'm looking at it. It looks like a bigger lot, but it's a lower assessed value.
I believe it's a smaller square footage. Why is that not?
$24,860 square feet.
I do not see it on my comp sheet. Let me pull it up on my worksheets. I'm sorry for that.
All right. I don't know if it's probably not all buildable. There's some grade out there, but that's a big lot.
It's very similar to mine. Like it's super steep, and over half the lot is just rock and interface, and it's not particularly usable. But it's
about
nice. It's wooded, and it's nice to have the trees.
Yeah.
Yeah. So next door, it is the smaller square footage on the actual house.
That was the difference in the improvements.
Yeah.
Okay.
But for that, I mean, that one again, we were more looking at just to bring in line with quality wise, and again looking at like the lots. But with the land sales that we had, even if you were to cut the lots, I mean, you see how much those smaller lots are selling for as well in that neighborhood. And I believe the subject's assessed value is also a little lower than the next door as well at 171.
Okay.
The house he's talking about, the 4109, it's assessed for a 1.549 in the 2020 year.
Oh, you're right. I'm sorry. I should have put my contacts in this morning. Yeah, you are correct.
Okay, that's it. That was my question.
Okay, with no further questions, Ms. Vitas, if you take a minute to wrap up, please.
Yes. I just want to say that we did take a look at everything. And we did look at surrounding sales and surrounding land sales, and we just felt that the direction that we did does bring the property into a fair and equitable value, and that we recommend that the board please confirm this new reduced value. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. John, if you take a minute to wrap up, sir.
Certainly. So thank you all for the time. Like I said, the house was on the market. They did have a weird auction thing, but like it went back on the market. It was on the market for many months before then. And a similar thing happened down the road in 2019 where one of the houses was assessed for like $1.5 million, and they bought it for 1.2 million, because like houses are unique and naturally difficult to do that for. And so I believe we paid the fair market value of it, which is substantially less than the assessed value. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, it's just among the board members. What's everybody think? Mr. Hoffman.
I'll just point out a couple of observations. I don't build luxury homes, so but this is kind of an art and less of a science. And one of the things when you get up above that $1.5 million threshold is the buyer gets a little bit more nitpicky. So it might not seem like a lot, but it might be something that's right straight on the end of a cul-de-sac, looking right into it. When you drive in, everybody's headlights are going to go into your windows, versus the one that's off to the side that has trees in front of it, that has some privacy when you pull into the wide driveway. Could make a difference in the price by $200,000. So that doesn't show up as much when you're shopping $750,000 houses in Arlington, but when you get into that $2 million range, that can sometimes explain it, and maybe explain why the seller didn't get the number that they were looking for.
Okay. Other comments? Mr. Metzger.
Two quick ones. First, the appellant should congratulate himself for doing himself a favor by establishing the true quality of the improvement to his benefit and for equalization and fairness. And second, we hear a lot about a valid sale, right time, on blank, in the assessment. And in mass appraisal, 60,000 or so properties, it's just not possible to do that. We need to use some statistics, if for no other reason, not only for logistical reasons, but also for equalization and fairness reasons among neighbors. And I'll harken back to what Greg just said. Sometimes there's little quirks where somebody gets a good deal because they didn't care about something that someone else did. And finally, and therefore, it appears that their assessment's high, but in fact, their purchase price was low. And finally, I also find that properties that stay in the market too long get tainted, sometimes unfairly. Something's going to be auctioned, or it's sitting when everything else around it is selling. All of a sudden, everyone, the buying market decides, and I've been a victim of this myself as a listing agent. There must be something wrong with that place. It didn't sell with multiple contracts in a week. I don't want to know about it. And somebody gets lucky and buys it because they see through the fog.
Okay, others? Mr. Penaranda.
Yeah, I think timing was the factors in this transaction, because originally the property was listed for more than 2 million, 2.1, but I think in this particular case, to be honest, I think Mr. John and the family got a good deal on the property. I don't really see that the assessment is incorrect just based on the sales price.
Mr. Yates?
No, I agree. I mean, it takes a buyer. It was a rough period in the market right then. I think they got a good price. The comps don't seem that far off. It's just sometimes it happens. I've been there on the builder side.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Yeah, one of the things that I wanted to, when I drove by the property, I wanted to really see the assessments on the properties that are next to it or the same cul-de-sac, and I don't really see that this is out of line. I think the assessment is, in my opinion, the assessment is correct.
Okay. All right, would somebody like to make a motion? Mr. Metzger.
I move that we accept the department's assessment at revised assessment of $1,621,700.
I'll second.
Okay, motion is second by Mr. Yates. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. It's 4-1 without Mr. Hoffman. The county's confirmed at the revised assessment of $1,621,700. Thank you, Mr. John. Okay, I believe Mr. Siddiqui is on the call, and I believe we've been joined by board member Mr. Lawson.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Siddiqui, can you turn your microphone on?
Yes, can you hear
Your
me?
camera.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Do you have a camera?
Yeah, I think I'll turn the camera on. Let's see. Allow. Can you see my picture?
Yes, we can. Thank you, sir.
I think you can. Thank you, very much, Chairman.
Okay, hold on one second. Hold on. Okay. Okay, next on the agenda is the third case. The RPC is 14034-034. The property is located at 3409 Wilson Boulevard. And Mr. Siddiqui is here. He's the owner of the property. And sir, you can start with your 8 minutes and tell us about your property.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. My wife from Siddiqui, and I own this condo in ARP. I was this property in 2015, and this is the only property we own. I'm a retiree from the federal government, and what we see is a really a whopping increase of $57,000. About, I'm rounding the figures, in 1 year, and this increase was recommended by during the worst economic crisis we have faced in America since the Great Recession. In my whole life, owning properties for the last 50 plus years in America, I have never gone to appeal the decision of the staff. This is the only time I've come, whether when I was living in California or in Fairfax County, and now in Arlington County. So this is the only time, and the reason what drove me about this decision to appeal this thing to you, ladies and gentlemen, is I cannot expect about 9% increase, which it represents if you believe the value we paid for this condo, $610,000, $57,000 increase is about, it's actually more than 11 to 12% increase. So I am really, really hoping that the board will consider it. You have all the facts in terms of square footage. This condo we bought in as I said, 2015. We are renting this thing when we own our own house for $3,000 roughly. I'm rounding figures. Now, because of the economic crisis, then as well as the COVID situation, there are not that many renters as they were before. So I'm now renting this, forced to rent the same condo for $2,500 a month. So $500 less in rental income. The monthly dues of the condo dues have gone by $300. Now, if this increase were to go into effect, I'm going to be owning this property and renting it, and most likely I'll be forced to sell this property because of the economic situation, which doesn't make sense. So here I'm looking at you that there's no improvements in this property, same properties in the same building. On the this unit is 308 on the 3rd floor. The property on the 2nd floor and 2 properties on the 4th floor, they have been sold in 2020 for between $600,000 and $629,900. but assessing our property at $657,000, I believe this is, I may be a little wrong in the figures. So that is a whopping, as I said, increase of $57,000. So I would really urge the board to consider the economic conditions for renting it and all the other expenses related to it. And then if this staff recommendation were to hold, I think is unjustified. The board, I think you are the people who represent the public as appointees on this board. I think you have to consider what the economic facts are. You asked why. I think the staff made a mistake, in my opinion. The figures they are citing, those were the sales which occurred just prior to the COVID crisis began in early 2020. After I would have sold this property, but the reason we decided not to sell it, I was not able to get even what recovered the value of the money I paid in. So now the property values have gone up slightly in 2021 because things are looking good, because we seem to be getting out of this COVID pandemic. But I tell you, in 2020, it was such a bleak year. I don't know how the staff could come up with this high value of increase of $57,300, $50,300 in 1 year. This is just unjustified, and I request you to consider all the facts and reduce this assessment, which is, I believe, is about 40,000 more than it should be. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Carvajal for the county, please.
Sure, thank you. Good morning. The subject is Unit 308 at the ARC 3409 condo. It is a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom, 1,130 square foot unit and is located on the 3rd floor. No changes were made to the property record following the departmental review. The ARC is comprised of 85 units, and during the 2021 analysis, we observed 9 open market transactions that happened. 4 of these were of the subject's model. A 5% increase was applied across the board to all units except for the larger penthouse units. The subject property, along with 19 other units, saw a 12% increase to their model improvement base rates. This was to correct a problem with equalization between the subject's model and like units. Since we had 4 sales of the subject's model, we could easily identify a trend that this model was underassessed and that its assessment values were not equitable with those of comparable size. Since the building is fairly new, being built in 2008, most of the sales are still in their original condition, and some have slight updates to light and water fixtures. We saw no difference in market value between sales that occurred towards the beginning and following the start of the pandemic. Our analysis period, which ran from September 1st, 2019 to August 31st, 2020. There have been a couple sales that have occurred following the analysis period, so that sales that we will be considered for 2022's analysis period. We've had 3 sales so far, and those sales have not been verified to see if they're open market or not, but 2 of those sales are comparable in size to the subject and have since sold they're above their current 2021 assessed value. The comparables on page 4 are provided by the department to show the board what similar floor plans look like during the analysis period. I would also like to point out that these 3 comparable sales also experienced the 12% increase similar to the subject, and even with that, our assessment values for this floor plan are still relatively low. It is the department's belief that our opinion of value of $645,000 is fair and equitable, and that is all the department has to present. I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, thank you. Okay, questions from board members? Mr. Lawson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This is for the county. Every condo that's come before us has had a parking space assessed at $18,000. And this is 17.5 and then 20. And I'm just wondering why in this condo we're not going with the standard 18,000.
Sure. So there really is no standard value for a parking space in our valuation method. we look at the inventory of parking that is submitted with the declaration. Sometimes there'll be a standard parking space. And then by using sales ratios, we'll be able to figure out what the value of that space is. Sometimes when those spaces transfer, they will sell just the individual parking space. We can confirm our values that way. In this building specifically, there are 4 different types of parking spaces. There's a compact, a full parallel, and a handicap van accessible. So, in this building, most of the spaces have a value of $20,000, except for the compact garage, which has a value of $17,500. Like I said, we'll verify via sales and our sales ratios to make sure those values are correct, but there is no standard rate for a parking spot.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, other questions, Mr. Metzgen?
Again, for the department. Occasionally on condos, we see little changes in land value. In this case, it's almost 100%. Could you speak to what happened in this case?
Sure. So, we've had other cases this year where we've seen this, and I haven't brought it up, and but it was the number one question we had this year when people would call in about their assessed values is, why did my condo land increase 80 to 100%? Land values for residential condos in Arlington had not increased in most cases since at least 2011. So what we did was we conducted a study to figure out what the new land rates were, updated land values for condos for most of the 160 residential condos in Arlington. When we increase land in condo, we don't increase the total assessment per se. Whatever we increase the land value, we decrease the building value if there is no change to market value. So if there's no change in market value, let's say from 2020 to 2021, then if you saw a $50,000 increase to your land value, you should have seen a $50,000 decrease to your building value.
Very clear, thank you.
Madam Chairman, may I ask a question?
Not yet, sir. We'll get to you. Okay. Other questions from board members? No? Mr. Lawson.
Yeah, again, for the county, this condo went through a unique life cycle. I think Ed Pete had to sell it to somebody that did like a hotel for a while or something. Is that right? Did that interim use as a hotel, did that impact value at all, do you believe?
I wouldn't be able to say. So when the hotel was converted to condos, when it went through a similar process like when apartments convert to condos. One of the cases we had yesterday was a condo that was built in the 1960s that was converted to condos in 2005. When they're converted and we see the most amount of sales, our assessments will reflect the market value, whether that market value is affected on if it was an apartment or if it was a hotel. We can't identify that. We just see what the market value for that condo is at the time it's being sold.
Do you guys take a look at the POS and review the disclosures and the engineer and architect analysis?
Not that specifically. When we get a new condo, we will look at the declaration. That will usually give us information about what amenities are included, what the bylaws look at, what the parking situation is, what common element features are available. We'll take a look at that, but not as specific as you mentioned.
What I'm getting at is there any thought that perhaps there's a structural issue with the building? That's what I'm getting at.
Again, if it doesn't show up in market value, we would have no way to pick it up. We do have, I don't want to mention specifically, but we have, for example, condos in Roslyn where their original build quality might not have been that high. So they are having structural issues or they have to have special assessments onto their condo fees.
Right.
We do see that have sort of an effect on market value. If the agents disclose that information in the remarks, we'll see that people are a little hesitant and we'll see a slight reduction in market value. But to answer your question, it really depends on the building.
Okay.
All right. Any final questions from board members? Mr. Yates. Can you turn your microphone on?
Thought I had it on, I'm sorry. To the county, just brief questions. The second comp, is that an outlier in some reason, given that it is a difference in price? And I know it's a like 605, it's an odd number. Is there a reason why that one's is out of line with the ones that are running in the 7-8 area, 7-7? It's down, the assessed value is 632.
For comparable one,
2.
I have 634, 700.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
You mean, is there a reason for the discrepancy between comp 2's assessed value and sale price versus comp 1?
Yes.
Okay. Sure. So like I said, this building has a limited amount of sales, limited amount of models. The reason we see that discrepancy, I believe, is that model, the 1,300 square foot one. I believe it is the floor adjustment. It being located, the ones located on the 5th floor and above seem to have lower ratios. We might have to increase our floor adjustments for the ones located above that floor, but we don't have enough sales data to make that decision yet. So we want to see a couple more years of sales in order to make that final determination.
On the condos, I typically will take a look at the comps, dropping out the floor adjustments and the parking, which should even them out. And that one seems to be a little off, and I'm just wondering if there was a reason. The others seem to be more in line with the subject property.
I wouldn't say it's an outlier. Just looking at all the ratios, yeah, it's still in line. The discrepancy, like you said, it is a little larger. I don't know why the interiors seem comparable. There are, yeah, so.
Price. Okay.
Yeah, we can talk about that, Mark, because I have questions on that as well. Okay, any other questions? No? Okay, Mr. Carvajal, if you take a minute to wrap up, please.
The department has no other information to add. We just kindly request that you confirm our assessment of 645. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Siddiqui, if you take a minute to wrap up, sir.
He's muted.
Can you turn your microphone on, sir?
Yeah, am I on now?
There you are. Go ahead. Take a minute, sir.
So I would have not bought this condo. This building has structural problems. When it comes to counting the age of the building, it should be counted when it was built. So microwave and some of the other equipment, because when we tried to replace it, because they're saying it was built in 2008. So I think this we bought this condo as if it was new in 2015, but it has been essentially turned over from a hotel into a condo building. So I think what I'm trying to say is staff is ignoring the 3 comps I got from the real estate figures: 600,000 one for one on second floor, 610 on the second floor, and one 629 on the 4th floor. Those values are, so I think some those were ignored. Number one. Number two, I really believe that catching up this in the land assessment value in the worst economic crisis year because of pandemic. I think if the staff wants to catch up in this undervaluation, they should consider it over a year, 2-3 year period rather than just catching up in the year, which is American public, and I don't have to make you aware. This was the worst year. Why are we catching up all this in the land assessment value in 1 year, and that is in the worst crisis year? That's my appeal to you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, it's just among the board members now.
Thank you.
What's everybody think? Mr. Penranda?
Yeah, in reference to the units that Mark asked about, I think those seem to be, outliers, or, those are really the highest prices that have sold within the period. I also found a couple other properties that sold, one early July, unit 205 for 645, and also unit 304 that are the same size. It sold at late July for 665. There was another unit that is a little bit smaller. I think it has 1,082 square feet, sold in May of 2020 for 697. So, I think the assessment is, in my opinion, correct. It may be a little different next year because there's it's been a decrease a little bit on the current listing prices. But for this year, I think the assessment is correct.
Okay. Mr. Matzkin?
Since the appellant brought it up twice, I thought I'd just quickly respond to his opinion that the income approach for his property ought to be used. And although he might not have heard it, we've established many times in many ways that that's not appropriate for an individual residential property. We'll see more of this, of course, when we get to commercial properties. But for now, I certainly support, for the many reasons that we've heard before, the way the department is going about assessing this particular property.
Okay. Also, I'll just kind of reiterate here, the appellant brought up, several times about the economy and the situation with COVID and rents and whatnot. But the market is the market, and there are sales. I mean, it'd be a different story if there was no sales across the county, be it on condos or single-family homes. But we have seen that the market, even despite the COVID, has performed, and in some areas performed well. So I don't think that's a factor. And I agree with your point that you said about the income approach for value. Mr. Lawson.
Yes, Madam Chairman, I just wanted to share what Mr. Hoffman said the other day, and that is that a lot of these appeals we're seeing are by people that own a residential unit and are renting. And so they got hit with a double whammy. We had rents go down, and that, I think that is accurate with single family houses and residential, and yet the assessment went up. And so I'm sympathetic to the applicant, but I agree with my colleagues. I think the assessed value is proper.
Mm-hmm. In addition, I'll just note on the rent issue, rents did go down, and in some cases there was, certainly landlords that I am sure would say did not receive rents because of it, but there was also, rent assistance provided to landlords as well to offset that they could apply for. So, but again, I don't think that necessarily equates back to the assessed value of the properties. I had a little bit of struggle, as Mr. Gates did, on Comp 2, because if you adjust, just for the parking, because they do seem to be identical units, it seems like our property could be assessed at, 640 even, 639, because really the only difference is the other 5,000 for the floor adjustment. But, overall, when you look at the other two sales in the building, that throws me the other way back to say that, I'm okay with the assessment. So.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
I think Mr. Hoffman had a comment, but I don't see him. I don't know if he's still with us.
Yeah, I can hear everything fine. The video is just not
Okay.
moving for me anymore. So I was going to say pretty much the same thing that Barnes is saying, is sympathize with all the landlords that are that have bought these properties as investments and are getting absolutely hammered. The issue is that there's a for sale market out there for a much higher value for these units. So it's unfortunate, but that's the situation you're in.
All right, any further discussion or motion?
I will make the motion that we confirm the assessment at 645,300.
Okay, Mr. Metzgen is a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Huffman, you're in favor?
Aye. Yes.
Okay, perfect. Sorry, I couldn't see you. Okay, so it's unanimous 6-0. The county is confirmed at 645,300. Thank you, Mr. Siddiqui. Okay, I believe I saw Mr. Spencer.
Yes.
Hello, good morning.
Okay. And are you calling in, sir, or do you have a camera?
I am on camera. I can see myself, and I guess you can hear me, but maybe you can't see me. But yes, I have a camera and mic.
Okay, I don't. Does anybody else see him? I don't see him.
Yeah, I can see.
You see him? I just
Yes.
see his initials. All right. Okay, the next case on the agenda is RPC 14025-159. Property is located at 1000 North Randolph Street. Mr. Richard Spencer is here as the owner. Mr. Spencer, you can start with your 8 minutes and tell us about your property, sir.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. It's similar to the prior callers. Obviously, I'm contesting that the assessment for 2021 reflects the actual value of my unit at 1000 North Randolph Street in the Berkeley condominium, unit 510. I'm not a realtor or an appraiser, so I'm at a bit of a disadvantage for how the county arrives at this number, and this is my first appeal, so I hope you'll have patience with me in the process. But the bottom line to me is that the tax assessment, I would think that the statute would require that the assessment be based on a forecast of the actual value for the year in which the assessment is ascertained, and that just does not seem to be accurate at all in the case for my unit. So I was provided the data in the April 27th review letter, and I contest the validity of that data. Unit 210 was provided as a comparable appraisal. I just think that the whole tier, my unit is 510. I think the whole tier is inaccurately appraised. Even if you look at that letter of April 27th, it provides a comparable of unit 605. And even if you add square footage and the extra parking space that my unit has, you wouldn't go from the price in that letter, the assessment or the sales price of that letter of 655, I believe, where is it, to all the way to 770. So the sales price was 655 for that unit in March of 2020. I don't see how you could get over $100,000 higher for my unit if that's being used as a comparable. And thirdly, in that April 27th letter, the unit 908 is not a valid comparable, even despite its sales price well above the assessed value, as that's really a penthouse unit. It has 3 balconies, and it has a laundry room, and it has a den. That's not reflected in that value. So that's sort of a very premium property at the very top level of this 83 unit building. I just don't consider that a valid comparable. It's grossly inflated relative to my unit on the 5th floor. If looking at, to me, the proof is in the pudding for actual values in 2021, and the assessment does not factor in that the current condominium fee for my unit is over $1,000 a month. That was decided at the annual meeting for 2020 that they would be increased to that rate, which also decreases the market value. And additionally, there was a unit in unit 310 that is in the same tier, far closer to my unit, 2 levels below my unit. It went on the market on the MLS for 160 days in March of this year, and it didn't sell at $725,000. And so that's a great disparity between what the county feels my unit is worth at $770,000. If unit 310, which is a more accurate comparable than anything in the April 27th letter, did not sell after 160 days at $725,000, I don't see how the county can, in good faith, assess me at $50,000 over that value when 310 didn't even sell. Similarly, unit 204, which is a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, did in fact sell for only $626,000, also in 2021. So if, again, the assessed value at $770,000 for my unit is supposed to be its value for this year of 2021, these comparables of actual data in 2021 just do not square with the value of my unit. I also wanted to raise the issue of the 120% increase in the land value. I know that was brought up with the prior condominium owner at the ARC building at 3409 Wilson. I don't think that seems arbitrary to me and unfair, given that there is a vast inventory of rental units, of apartments. So if you're comparing this style of living in high-rise apartments, when there's an excess inventory of leasable properties, I don't see how the land value for condominiums is going to increase when there's so many options for people to live in apartments if they're planning to rent. Let's see. And in addition to the 120% increase in the land value for my unit, the building value was increased by $20,000. Well, that seems like maybe perhaps a more reasonable increase than an overall increase from 1 year to the next. For my value went from 690,000, as the board must be aware, to 770,000, almost $100,000 increase in assessment. This is all to say that as a result of the high condo fee at over $1,000 a month for my unit, and the over 10% increase in my tax assessment, I have no choice to sell my unit. I'm planning to sell it this year. In fact, I'm planning to sell it this month. I'm in the process. That's why there's an echo behind me. My unit is empty. I've basically moved out. I'm planning to put it on the market this month. And so by way of education for me, I wonder if, I just asked the board if they could educate me, is if the actual sales price of my value, which I'm confident will be well below $770,000, at most, I believe it will be $750,000, I've got my fingers crossed, that will there be a refund to me for my taxes that I'm going to be paying next week for the first installment for 2021. I would also add that consistently, NVAR analyses provided by realtors consistently put my unit, number 510, somewhere in the range of between 725 and 750,000. That's even accounting for improvements in my unit, which are not great. I've replaced the carpet with cork flooring in some of the rooms, but otherwise I haven't updated anything else in my unit. So it's basically the 2004 stock construction for my unit. I haven't been keeping track of my time. I'd like to use it. Do I still have time left to speak?
Yes, yes, you do.
Let's see. What was the other point I was going to make? And I guess also by way of education, it just seems a little arbitrary. I suppose there's the rules. I read the rules of the board that you're using values between what is it, September 2019 and August 2020. But if I have another property, as an example, if a sale occurs just outside that period, I just do not understand how the board can't factor that in to an accurate value of a property when it's trying to forecast as accurately into the new year as it possibly can. So what I guess I'm asking is that the board consider actual data that is appearing after the September 2020 period up to today for what has market activity been for the bottom line sales prices for units like mine and for the area. And again, I think unit 310 is very telling that it went on the market for 160 days at $725,000 and it did not sell. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Carbo.
Thank you. The subject is unit number 510 at the Berkeley condo. It's 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom, 1,246 square feet, and is located on the 5th floor. There are 83 units at the Berkeley condo, and only 2 sales occurred during the analysis period. A 5% increase was applied to 1- and 2-bedroom units smaller than 1,200 square feet, and a 15% increase was applied to 2- and 3-bedroom units above 1,200 square feet. These increases were not based solely on the 2 sales that happened in 2021's analysis. Rather, we had been tracking an increasing market value in this building for the past couple of years. But since sales are always limited, we had been holding back until we saw further data points demonstrating an increase in market value. This is evident in the no change in assessed value for the subject since 2018. Like I said, we normally don't see a lot of sales at the Berkeley, and the last time the subject's model was sold was in 2016, which was the sale of the subject itself, and before that, in 2015, the sale of Unit 210, which sold at $720,000. Unit 210 is comparable 3 on the comp sheet and is provided as an assessment comp to show equalization since sales were limited. The appellant brought up the sale of Unit 310 and Unit 204. Those sales will be considered for 2022's assessment period. The sale of Unit 310 did not show up in our analysis when we completed it for 2021, and the sale of Unit 204 closed on December 28th, 2020. Comps 1 and 2 are provided to show market value at the Berkeley. While looking at the comparables, please take into consideration that the building was built in 2004 and that sales that we typically see in this building have comparable interior qualities. The total assessed value of the subject did increase 11.5% from 2020 to 2021. But also please take into consideration that this 11% increase is the only increase the subject has seen since 2018. Because of this and the information provided in the analysis, the department requests that the board please confirm the department's opinion of value of $770,600. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. Okay, questions from board members? Mr. Yates, turn your microphone on, please.
To the county, as you mentioned, the 11% increase and nothing since 2018. Is that the same for all the other units?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Matzkin.
Again, excuse me, for the department, when did 310 sell after not selling for a long time?
We have the sale of Unit 310, November 6th, 2020.
It's a little bit out of the assessment period. I get it. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Penaranda.
Mr. Carvajal, can you tell me what the floor value adjustment, which floor did that start to apply? Because I know this unit has $14,000 in floor adjustment. How about Unit 310 and 210?
310 would have a floor adjustment of $7,000, and 210 would have a floor adjustment of $3,500.
Okay.
The floor adjustments go, they taper up, they go all the way to the 9th floor, which has an adjustment of $29,000.
Okay.
Okay, I have a question for the county. On the subject property, there's 2 parking spaces. I assume one is at 20,000, and is the second one at 12,000?
No, ma'am. We have 2 subcompact garage spaces, each at 16,000.
Okay, all right, just wanted to see the makeup of that. And then also for the county, the appellant, I thought, brought up a good point about the sale of the penthouse unit that sold at $860. It's assessed at $786. So the difference in assessment is $16,000. Where I mean, just the fact that it's a penthouse unit to start with, plus the 3 balconies, it seems like there would be more of a spread between those 2, either higher for the penthouse or certainly lower for the subject. So could you speak to that, please?
Right. So of comparable 1, that penthouse model, there are only 3 units. And like I said, with the limited amount of sales, we don't often get the sale of a penthouse unit. I think what this is showing us is that we need to go back and take a look at the past sales of those penthouse units. Because you're right, the adjustment between the subject and that penthouse unit has to be larger. And just by looking at the sale price, my guess would be that comparable 1, that penthouse unit, has to come up.
Okay. Other questions? No? Mr. Hoffman, because I can't see you.
I'm hearing everything. I don't have any questions.
No questions? Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, Mr. Carvajal, if you take a minute to wrap up, sir.
Sure, the department has nothing else to add. Just that you please consider confirming our assessed value of $770,600. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Spencer, if you take a minute to wrap up, sir.
Yeah, I just don't understand why a comparable from 2015 would be at all relevant. That seems completely, I don't even know why that was raised as part of discussion. Again, the Unit 204 sold, what I have on record, I don't know what Mr. Carvajal said, I thought he had the date incorrect. I have that as having sold in December of 2020. And Unit 310 as having been on the market and taken off the market and never sold as of December, I'm sorry, Unit 310 went off the market in December of 2020, and 204 did in fact sell in December of 2020. So you have two comparables there for just outside the assessment period. It just seems that if it seems so patently unfair of the county to come up with a market value just outside. It seems very arbitrary to just cut off the date when you'd have actual data to show what would be an accurate reflection of the value in 2021. And again, I mean, it's disheartening now that as a result of this call, you may be raising the assessment for my neighbor up at 908, rather than more accurately reflecting the assessment for my property and my entire tier.
All right, thank you, sir. Okay, it's just among the board members. I'm going to go ahead and just start on a couple items that I just took notes of from the appellant, and then we can get into discussion. But, you know, first off, just to his last point that he brought up, why the sale from 2015 is on there, that's a valid question. The appraisal practices is that you would use 3 comparables. I believe the county said that there weren't sales. They have the other 2. They chose to put that sale in there. And then that would be up to the board to look at to say whether that's relevant or not. So that's the reason for that. The second issue that the appellant brought up was, after he puts his property on the market and sells it, if in fact it sells for less, does he get a refund? I'm not sure if he was joking with that or not, but the answer to that would be no. Just as if he sold it for more, the treasurer would not send him a bill and say, we assessed it for too low. And then thirdly, just to clarify, because several times he mentioned about the arbitrary time frame of the analysis period. Again, this is mass appraisal process. They need to be able to look at some defined space of sales. They have extended that out. Historically, it used to end in July. Now it goes out to the end of August. They've got to be able to do, I don't know what the total number of properties in the county is, but you know, that total number needs to be analyzed, assessed, and those bills need to go out. The law does allow the county to look at, and I think we've seen that the county's done it and the board has done it, to look at sales outside of that period if in fact there's a trend to those sales and not necessarily just one case. So I just wanted to clarify those 3 things. Sometimes we get into discussions and some of the questions that the appellants ask don't get answered. And so, you know, that being said, now just to move on to the actual process here, you know, I do have a little angst with the comparable to the penthouse unit. I think with the additional square footage, I mean, the county did in fact say that there should be more of a, you know, spread between those 2. And I don't necessarily think the answer is to say, oh, well, we'll move the other one up next year. I have a little bit of angst that this may be, you know, slightly over-assessed from a standpoint of the current situation based on the 2 sales. But I'm very interested to hear what other folks have to say. Mr. Yates.
Mary, what I did is I stripped away the floor variation and the parking, and that puts his unit at a 735, the penthouse at 732, the other unit at 600, 725 for the last unit that was back in 15, and this one that we're not putting in comes in a little over 7. So, I mean, he's at 735. That's higher than the penthouse per, you know, and then I tried to even look at it, some of it even, I know we don't look at square footage, but by all accounts and all the comparables that everyone's brought up, he's higher than everyone.
Yeah, no,
I mean, there's just no way. And I tried to ratchet it back, and I came up with about a $720,000 value when I put things back in and tried to equalize things back out with the other comparables.
What was the base that you said on comp one, the penthouse without the parking in the floor?
732. He's at 735.
Okay, Mr. Lawson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The Berkeley condominium had a bizarre situation that arose about 3 years ago, and their general counsel brought me into it. What had happened is, back when the Berkeley got built, the inspector who was in charge of inspecting the construction had issues, and a whole lot of things weren't done that were supposed to have been done. And so somehow this came to the attention of the county, and the condominium had to go back and put in like an area for bikes to be stored, and a number of other things that came up. And so the assessed value or the assessments had to go up dramatically to address that. And so I think you have the situation where you do have really high condo fees. I'm kind of cat-a-corner, and mine's at about 700, and I've got a 2-bedroom. So I think you've got that issue that we may be still experiencing some fallout from that. I agree that I think the assessed value on this is way too high, and I'd be inclined to go towards where the applicant is.
Okay, I just have a follow-up question to your comment. I'm confused because there was problems in the building that the assessments had to be increased to fix that. How did
condo assessments?
They had to pay for things.
You're talking about the condo
when you do a budget at the condo.
So you misspoke.
I'm sorry, what?
So you misspoke from a standpoint of it's not the condo fee, or it's not the assessment, the condo fee went up to pay for it. Okay, that's where you said assessment, and I couldn't figure out.
I apologize.
The county was paying for that.
Right.
But we see that in a lot of buildings where the condo fees go up, and I mean, if you look at the sales, I mean, that's where you would look at, is it affecting, the sales and the turnovers, and these don't seem to be turning over in there, so the people are staying there. So, I can sympathize with that, but I think that we see condo fees going up across the county for a litany of reasons. So
utilities.
Okay. Mr. Penaranda, you had something? I'm sorry.
Well, I agree that I think the assessment is a bit aggressive in this particular case for this year. And I like your analysis, Mark. I think you did a very nice addition and subtraction to come up with a value and I think the sale of 310, which was listed in June of 2020, I think it supports. I mean, we don't necessarily consider, but I know the appellant thinks that it didn't sell, but the unit did sell in November for $718,000. It also had 2 parking spaces, and so I'm okay with going with the value that you came up with, 720.
It actually came up to 720,800 when I looked at all the comps discussed, and looked at square footages and everything, and tried to come up with what the number equalized across the board on all of them, and taking that penthouse issue in.
Okay, so you're saying, I'm sorry, 720,800. Okay. All right, other comments?
No.
No?
Nope.
All right, Mr. Yates, would you like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we reduce the assessment to $720,800 based on recalculation of the comparables.
Okay, Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, motion by Mr. Penaranda. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Opposed? Okay, it's unanimous. The assessment has been reduced to $720,800. Thank you, Mr. Spencer.
Thank you very much.
I believe I saw Mr. Barrett.
Oh, sorry. I'll just sign off. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Much appreciated.
Mr. Barrett, can we just check your microphone?
Yes, can you see and hear me clearly?
Yep, we can. Okay, and we see Mr. Beck. Okay. Okay, the next case on the agenda is RPC 13041-026. The property is located at 3713 6th Street North. Mr. William Barrett is here representing the property as the owner. Mr. Barrett, you can start with your 8 minutes and tell us about your property.
Thank you very much. And just to correct one thing, I think the only place it appeared incorrectly was on the agenda. It's 5713 6th Street North. But I think the other documents you have the address correct. So my wife and I bought this house in 2015 for $621,000. And I don't think I'll need the whole 8 minutes. You may recall I came before you last year to appeal our assessment. And there's the property next door at 5717 was basically an identical house built at the same time or within a year, but which had not been maintained quite as well. But this board chose to set our assessment for last year equal to that, to the next door property at just under $640,000. Subsequently, that basically I would say you were right on the money because that property sold for $640,000 last summer, and it's now in the process of being, it's been torn down earlier this year, and it's being replaced with a larger new house. So I was unpleasantly surprised to see the huge increase in the assessment for this year from the county, and I think they're not. I think they're missing a couple of things. One is specifically with regard to the property next door. Like I said, it's an equivalent property. It was in worse condition, so it's hard to estimate exactly. It wasn't condemned or totally uninhabitable, but it definitely needed work if it was going to be, a great appealing place for a family or to rent out. So it's worth something less than ours in that condition, but not, $20,000 or $40,000 less than ours. And then and that sale at $640,000 at the time of my appeal, when I submitted the appeal earlier this year, was just coded as a valid sale. And subsequently, I discovered that very recently the county has decided that it was actually a land sale, which I didn't think was kind of fair. As I mentioned, the house was habitable. It just was not in great condition. We did go and see it when it was on the market, and it was okay, but needed, we'll say, $10,000 or $20,000 of work probably. And then the other comparables that the county brought, there's one a little bit farther down the street at 5723 6th Street North. That house, I would say, is in much nicer condition. So I challenged the county's assessment of the quality and condition. I don't think that ours is quite at that same level, and obviously it's had a lot more recent work done to it than ours has. So I don't know how well you can extrapolate. And also even more so with their comparable 5736 4th Street North, that backs up to the woods, and it looks, from the listing photos when it sold very recently, very nice and very recently redone. Also, I think has more usable bedrooms than we do. And just to be very clear on the attributes of our property, only the main floor is really usable as kind of a normal living space. There is a room that you can use, I would say, as a guest bedroom in the basement, but the ceilings are very low. You'll hit your head if you're more than 6 feet tall. And there's a bathroom with a shower stall, but with, like I said, an extremely low ceiling. So it's not a place that you could rent out for any kind of money, or that you'd want to have as a child's bedroom or anything like that. It's really more of a guest room. It's not even, you can't even have a ping pong table down in the basement because the ceiling's too low. and there's no heating or cooling in the basement. So I think our home, if we were to sell it, would have very limited appeal. And even during the high prices of the pandemic, if people are trying to, if it's a family of more than 2 people, you could have, a bedroom and a home office. But if you've got 2 kids, it's really not that appealing compared to a lot of other houses. So I don't know that we would get that premium, even in that extreme circumstance with the lack of inventory and everybody trying to move out of 1-bedroom apartments in the city. So I think the most likely, and this is what we saw with the house next door when it was on the market, was there were visits from couples with no children and developers that ended up selling to a developer who's tearing it down. And I don't know if he's challenging his assessment, because the assessment is $679 this year for that property, which I think, I guess he's got lumber costs and labor costs that he's more worried about than taxes. But I think it's, that's an even more, perhaps an even more egregious overassessment than ours is. So I don't have the necessary expertise to come up with what's the right number, but I said 650. It's certainly not anywhere close to 693 or so where the county has assessed it. I think that's all I have to say, but I'll have to answer any questions when the time comes.
Okay, thank you, sir. And we have Mr. Dubay for the county.
Yes, good morning. Did review the property. The subject property is a 1-story home over a basement, and it was built in 1950 with an effective age of 1965, and all the details are listed on the comp sheet. And the main basis for the appeal was that neighboring property. This case was brought before the board last year, and the board reduced the subject's value to match that of the neighboring property. So I wanted to share the screen and pull up the photos of these 2 properties so we can take a look at them, which is what I did in my analysis. I wanted to look at these 2 properties closely. So let me see if I can find those for you real quick. So here's the neighboring property that's being brought up and was sold actually in the analysis period in June. It was determined to be a land sale because the property was torn down, and given the information of listing, listed as is, needs TLC, and the condition of the property, we determined that, once it gets torn down, it does become a land sale for us, and we use that for valuing our land. And when looking and considering those sales prices of land sales, they're not paying for the improvements, but the county does have to acknowledge that there are improvements that exist. So we can't just value land alone, but the 641 did support our land values in that neighborhood. And whenever I reviewed these 2 properties, there were obvious differences between this property and the subject property that are causing the valuation differences. And currently the valuation difference is only $13,200. And I think in reviewing the interior photos of both properties, you can see why the difference is there. Part of it's due to square footage. The front porch on the subject property is enclosed, so there's slightly more square footage. But there is also finished square footage in the basement, where the property next door had no finished square foot in the basement. So you can see the difference between the 2 properties and their conditions. This is from the listing in 2015, which the appellant, when they purchased. And this is the basement area that we have is finished. Currently on the subject property, we have an effective age of 1965, which is very conservative. I did pull up the valuation on our cost breakdown, and we're currently valuing the basement area, which includes a full bathroom that the neighboring property doesn't have. We're only valuing that at $5,580 of assessed value. So given the differences between these 2 properties, and also looking at the comparable property that sold 2 doors down from the subject, which is comp 2 on the sheet, the sales price of that one was $735,500, and that sold in July of 2020. We do have the effective age of that property at 2,000 and higher square footage, which is acknowledging the renovations and the addition work that's been done. And you can see that our assessed value is at $731,100. So the assessed value on that one, whenever I reviewed it, was pretty spot on with the sales price. So again, looking at the information, the comparable properties that are, one next door or 2 doors down, I didn't see any further room to make an adjustment. And the adjustment that was made last year matching the subject to the neighboring property, I didn't agree with because there are descriptive factors which, are in the square footage. There's an extra full bathroom. There's finished square foot in the basement. You have to acknowledge that. And we're only acknowledging that to the tune of $13,200. So to me, it looked in line and it was fair and equitable. So I recommend confirming the current assessed value.
Okay, thank you. Now it's just questions from board members. Mr. Lawson.
This is for the owner. On the basement, have you got a door to the outside from the basement?
Yes, there's a door that I think was added by the previous owner from the driveway that goes down a few steps into the unfinished area of the basement.
So part of the basement's finished and part is unfinished?
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay, other questions? No? Okay, Mr. DeBay, if you would take a minute to wrap up.
Sure. Given the descriptive factor differences between the two properties, the two neighboring properties, the other comparable that sold 2 doors down, everything looked in line to me with the market, and I recommend confirming the current assessment.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Barrett, if you take a minute to wrap up, sir.
Sure, thank you. Just one or two things to mention in response to Mr. DeBay's presentation. The photos that were taken of the property next door, because it was being sold with the idea it would probably be torn down, they didn't use they didn't doll it up with staging or wide angle lenses like they did in the photos that we showed you from when our property was listed by its previous owner. So it may, that wasn't an exactly fair comparison as far as kind of how nice and large rooms appear and all that. Please take that into consideration. I do still have to disagree with him on the relative appeal in when it comes down to it. If someone is looking for a house in Arlington these days and they've got 1 or 2 kids, they're not going to be interested in paying $700,000 for something like what we've got.
Okay, thank you, sir. All right, it's just among the board members. All right, nobody's talking. All right, I'll start. Last year, I will say I was sympathetic with the appellant and may even have moved to do the actual reduction, but I know I voted for it. But on this one, I have to say, with the sale of the property next door, I think the appellant's argument that somebody with 2 children wouldn't spend this amount of money for that, they wouldn't be looking at, that square footage size house either. When I look at, because it's just limited just from a standpoint of, less than 900 square feet. But when I look at the sale of that, even though it was sold as a tear down, somebody could have feasibly come in there and bought it at $640 and moved into it. And regardless of staging, I think we all can look at the pictures and know, if you put nice furniture in it, and this, not, it would certainly show better. But the house was certainly inhabitable and could have been sold as somebody's primary residence had they wanted to do it. It's just in this case, somebody came in and said, I'm going to tear it down and put up a much larger one. So we don't have as much angst with the assessment that I did from last year. And especially, I think that, Mr. Dubé brought up a good point that the difference from, not a lot, but of the square footage difference and the additional bathroom, we're only really looking at a $13,000 difference from the house that, yes, has been torn down, but in its original state, I think, probably was worth what it was assessed for. So what's everybody else think?
Can you see me? No?
Nope, but go ahead, Mr. Hoffman.
The only thing that jumps out is that sale was for $640 and not, which is lower than the assessment. Mm-hmm. So, I could see them being comparable, maybe 57, maybe the subject is a little bit higher, but we're starting from an assessment that's on the other property that was probably too high.
All right. Anybody else? Mr. Penaranda?
I originally thought that maybe the assessment was a bit higher, just like last year, but I agree with you. I think, the differences are there. I was trying to also find other comparables. I found a couple other ones that are higher. Excuse me. And even the assessment is over 800,000 on those properties. So I'm okay with the assessment the way it is for this year.
Anyone else? So am I assuming with no comments, are you okay with it? We need something from you.
I mean, just since you can't see me, I'm supportive of the appellant's number.
Okay. That was Mr. Hoffman. Mr. Metzgen.
Well, I have to ask the question then of Greg, why?
Okay, so the house next door sold for $640, valid sale, market sale in the analysis period. The highest and best use for that property is what looks to me like they're going to pop the top, put new siding on, and maybe build out an addition off the back. So they're putting some value to the foundation, essentially, the utilities in the property, which if you compare the subject property and the one next door, the foundation and the utilities are essentially identical. So we have a market sale at $640, which is a perfect comp, if you ask me, and then we have an assessment of the subject property for $52,900 higher. So it doesn't fit with my logic looking at it as a builder.
Right, but do you look at that and think possibly it was discounted from a standpoint of that somebody was going to come in there and have to spend money to be able to get it to a condition? I mean, I'm looking more at, what it sold for versus what it was assessed at. I don't know. I mean, I look at the other assessments and the other sales. I don't find it out of line. When you look at, this is, less than 900 square feet. You've got, 960 at 132,000. 1,081 at 116,000. I mean, I think the land certainly is equalized in the area.
Yeah, well, I think the land is right.
The land's right.
Right. Oh, no. That's what I'm saying. So, I mean, we're coming down to the building.
Yeah.
And so when you look at the assessment on that building at 852, and you're looking that it was assessed at 64.7. Our subject property is assessed at 77.9.
With some finished basement and things of that nature,
right,
too.
And the extra bathroom. So
probably a little more livable.
Yeah, except you don't get to the land value unless you rehab the house. So, I mean, if we're saying what's the existing condition of the building, and this is a property that somebody is going to live in as is, then you have to say that the land is actually worth less than the one you're tearing it down. You got to look at it one way or another. Highest and best use is pop the top and renovate this thing. That's what they're doing next door.
Mm-hmm.
My logic is if he put it on the market at the exact same time as the neighbors, it would probably sell for the same amount. I mean, there's absent maybe the garage in the back or the shed or whatever that is, and that's why I think at $650 it's $10,000 higher than the other one.
All right, Mr. Metzgen.
Well, quickly, I think a full bathroom, even with a low ceiling, is worth a good amount of money. Certainly, the 13,000 that the department has ascribed to the entire basement area, forgetting about only the bathroom. I was also looking clearly at the improvement, as we just mentioned. That's where the differences are, and I kept going over and over how closely these improvements are. But it seems to me that the subject's improvements are more superior to comparable 1 than comparables 2 and 3 are superior to the subjects. But yet the subject's improvement value is closer in absolute dollars to comparable 1 than they are to 2 and 3.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's to the subject's, the appellant's advantage. And I just don't want to focus only on the next door when we have some decent other comparables. I don't want to give it too much weight. It certainly should be weighty. But I thought the subject, once again, I'll repeat myself, I hope I'm clear, is closer to the other two in 2 and 3 in quality or livability or something, be it its assessment is closer to a lesser.
Take into the effective age a little bit, comparing those. I hear what you're saying, but I think the assessment's a little high, but I'm trying to figure out how to change that in any way, and I don't know what that number would be.
I support that. That's right.
Yeah.
Nothing definitive to.
Mr. Penaranda?
I mean, I can see, your point, Greg, but we have to also consider that the property that's sold next door for $640, it's sold to a buyer that came and bought it as a land sale. But like Mary said, it could have been easily kept as a residence. The property was listed for $695. Somebody came and bought it for $640 on a cash sale. On cash sales, we normally see that people are going to come and make an offer at a discount because it's a quicker sale, no conditions, no contingencies. And, especially if you're going to use it as a land sale, you don't worry about inspections or anything. So, based on that and based on the fact that the subject property has more usable spaces in the basement and the bathroom, I'm supporting the assessment the way it is. I don't really see that just that sale is going to make me change. I think it's a cash sale. It was listed for $695. Somebody came and, made a good offer on it.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Lawson, you had a comment?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. What I did is took last year's and multiplied it by 1.5 and got 670, and then I multiplied it by 1.1 and got 580. So if it went up 5%, it's 670. At 10%, it's 580. Because I know we can go back and forth over, does the basement have value? Is it really a land? All these kinds of things. But it seemed to me that the more appropriate way is to look at it from, say, a 5 or a 10% increase, because I don't think it went from 638 to 692. So, I'm in between where the applicant is and where the county is myself.
That's where I am.
And I'm sorry, and you said that at 5% it went to 670?
What I did is,
I know, just the numbers.
670, and then at 10%, 580. Okay, and I multiplied it by what? I'm sorry.
So at 10%,
it was 580. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. And again, we reduced it last year to 638 from the 651. Based on the sales that we had at that point in time. But I think it may be slightly high, but with the other two sales, I think it's supported when you look at the building assessment, and as I don't know, I forget, I think Mr. Matskin said, or Mr. Penaranda about the sale right next door. I don't like one price point that we're looking at. Right. Mr. Lawson.
Yeah, one other thing that I looked at is it complies with zoning. It's a 6,000 square foot lot, but it doesn't comply with width. And so it's a long, narrow lot. And my guess is that you're constrained, that the builder next door, and I don't know, I'm just speculating, but the builder next door may have decided not to go to the BZA for relief, or decided maybe to alter what he would like to build there versus what he can build there. And so I do think the narrowness of the lot also has some impact on value. You may be, every builder wants to have a house with a garage, and Whether that's doable or not, I just don't know. This is more like an R5 lot really than an R6 lot. So I looked at that also and considered that.
Okay, I'm going to just interject at that. I mean, we're assessing the properties in their current use, not future use. I mean, if we did that, I think that we need to put a premium on every house in Arlington and say, if they, tore down the house, they could put up something bigger. So you could potentially build something bigger. It's worth more. I mean, we got to look at what's on the property, at the time of the assessment, and not what down the road you or somebody else may think could or could not be put on the property.
Right,
so.
Right. I hear you, and yet it could be that for whatever reason, internal layout or whatever, you can't go back with an addition if and when you decide to do that. So this may lend itself towards a raise and rebuild rather than add on to. That's the only point I'm making, and that could be based upon the lot configuration.
Okay, where is everybody?
I can throw something out there. We'll see how people feel about it. But I would say just due to the fact that the neighboring property was assessed $30,000 higher than the sale price, I'd support reducing the improvements value to equal the neighboring property, which takes the overall value of the subject property to $679,700.
Okay, so we have a motion to reduce the assessment to $679,700. Do I have a second?
I'll second for discussion.
Okay, a motion, a second by Mr. Lawson. All in favor?
I thought we were discussing.
Oh, well, we don't normally do that. We've had a discussion. We've got a motion and a second on the table.
Fair enough. Time for a vote. Go ahead.
Okay.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So we got 3, and then all opposed.
Aye.
I can't see. Mr. Matskin, are you opposed? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so it's 3-3. It's tied, so it reverts to the county. The assessment stays at $692,900. Thank you, Mr. Barrett.
Thank you for your consideration.
That was no. Jose, Ken, and Mary. Okay, and just because when we put everybody on the screen, you guys are putting your hands out here. I can't see them. So if you could get them in closer to you or use the electronic one. Okay, even like when you go to speak, I sometimes can't see. Okay, so that reverts to the county on a 3-3 fail. Okay, the last case on the agenda is RPC, and I'm sorry, is Mr. Youssef on the call?
No, he's not.
He's not? Okay. So that is RPC 15046-011. The property is located at 3140 17th Street North. It's Mr. Youssef's property who's not with us. Mr. Lawson has a conflict of interest and is not going to vote on this, but I ask that you stay on the call. Don't participate because we've got business afterwards that you need to stay for. So that being said, then, I'm sorry? Oh, I just didn't want to overspeak if Mr. Youssef is here. Okay, then Ms. Churchill, if you'd start with your 8 minutes for the county and tell us about the property.
Yes, good morning. My name is Nicole Churchill and I'm a residential appraiser here in Arlington County. This property was virtually inspected on 3/8/21. The property is a 2-story brick veneer and cement fiber siding home with unfinished basement. It has 2 bedrooms, 1 half bath, and 2 full baths. Year built is 1938, effective age is 2000. Quality very good plus, and the finished square footage is 1,797 square feet. The appellant feels that his assessment value is unfair due to the market. The appellant also believes that he was harassed, targeted, and threatened when the Department of Real Estate visited his property due to a permit. The appellant's property increased 4% due to sales that occurred during the analysis period and within the neighborhood. The property's grade and effective age appear in line with the neighborhood in current condition. The appellant submitted comparables that all have a wide range of descriptive valuation factors that cause differences in value which include lower qualities and effective ages. The respective sales prices of these comparables are generally in line with their respective values. Some of these sales comparables are for the upcoming 2020 analysis and still need to be reviewed and possibly adjusted for next year's assessment based on any new information. You can see from the comp sheet that we provided the following comparables: 1819 North Highland Street, which is RPC 15157. This property is a 2-story brick veneer home with 3 bedrooms, 1 half bath, 3 full baths, and a finished basement. The year built is 1932, effective age 1990. The quality also is very good plus, and the finished square footage is 1,750. The property sold for $1,420,000 on 8/14 of 20, and the current assessment value is $1,406,800. This property has a lesser effective age, 1 additional full bath, and finished basement as compared to the subject. 1837 North Highland Street, RPC 15035-008. This property is a 2-story brick veneer home with 3 bedrooms, 1 half bath, 3 full baths, and a finished basement. Year built 1939, effective age 1959. Quality is very good plus, and finished square footage is 1,672. This property sold for $1,350,000 on 7/20 of 20. The current assessment value is $1,352,900. This property has a lesser effective age, lesser finished square footage, 1 additional full bath, and finished basement as compared to the subject. The following comparable is 1618 North Danville Street, RPC 155118. This property is a 1-story brick veneer home with 3 bedrooms, 1 full bath, and finished basement. Year built 1925, effective age 1945. Quality is very good minus, and the finished square footage is 1,303 square feet. This property sold for $1,210,000 on 8/24/20. The current assessed value is $1,151,400. This property has a lesser effective age, lesser finished square footage. It only has 1 story and a finished basement as compared to the subject. The final comparable is 1716 North Danville Street, RPC 15030-013. This property is a 2-story wood siding home with 3 bedrooms, 1 half bath, 3 full baths, and finished basement. The year built is 1925 with an effective age of 1995. The quality is very good plus, and the finished square footage is 2,653 square feet. This property sold for $1,545,000 on 1/21/20. The current assessment value is $1,539,400. This property has greater finished square footage, does not have a half bath and finished basement as compared to the subject. As a result of the review, the virtual inspection, and information submitted, we determined the assessment to be fair and equitable, and that the current effective age and quality are in line with the multiple permit and renovation work that's been done to the property. It is recommended that the board confirm the 2021 value of $1,438,000. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Questions from board members? Mr. Metzger.
Excuse me, for the department, I want to make sure I got this right. On comparable 4, they only have 1 full bath. You said they don't have a half bath. There's only 1 full bath in a house that size?
The 4th comparable has 3 full baths.
Okay, my sheet says 1.
It does not have a half bath. I put that there was a half bath. Let me double check that. There are 3 full baths.
Okay, that's a typo. Okay, great.
Thanks. Yeah, that makes more sense. Thanks.
I'm sorry about that.
That's all right. Any other questions?
Yeah, one quick one.
Sure. Mr. Hoffman.
4% property increase, that's year over year, but I got a 7% when I did the math. Are you just talking about the land or the improvements? It was $1,332,400 last year, right?
I believe that was supposed to be in my notes. It was supposed to be 4% to the neighborhood. not to the property, so I'm
What percent
sorry.
is the neighborhood increase?
Right.
This is almost 8%, the subject.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, the increase was due to the added, the permit work that was picked up for new construction on the property.
Okay.
Which raised the effective age.
Right.
Significantly.
Correct, yes.
Great.
Okay, any other questions?
Yes, my screen's not working right all
No
the time.
problem. Mr. Bar, or Mr. Yates, please.
To the county, the land jumped a good bit on this one. Is that pretty much the neighborhood land values jumping that way?
Let me just double check. And of course, my computer wants to be very slow, but yes, it was to the overall neighborhood land value increase. There was a
Okay.
large increase to the land value in that neighborhood.
Okay.
Anything else, Mr. Yates?
No.
All right, thank you. Mr. Chop, you take a minute to tell us anything else we need to know?
Sure. Again, I just, as a result of the review and the virtual inspection and the information submitted, we determined the assessment to be fair and equitable. And we ask that it is recommended that the board confirm the 2021 value of $1,438,000. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, it's just among the board members, the 5 of us. What's everybody think?
Looks okay to me.
Okay, Mr. Hoffman?
Yeah, I don't see any issue with the assessment.
Mr. Yates, anything different?
I'm fine with the number.
I'm okay with it too. I mean, looking at the neighborhood and everything else, all the other properties close by are assessed, and yeah, this is why. I mean, I'm good with it.
Okay, with the shake of Mr. Metzger's head, I'm going to go ahead and then move to confirm the county at the $1,438,000.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion, a second by Mr. Hoffman. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, it's 5-0. It's unanimous for the voting members that the county is confirmed. Okay, that completes the agenda. There's Mr. Lawson's back on. Does the county have any additional business?
No, Mary, we do not.
Okay, all right, perfect. All right, then can we go ahead, and then I believe if anybody else, any appellants, we can stop recording and